Hey everyone, how's it going? Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com. Welcome to NoDQ Panel. I am being joined by my usual panelists, good old JM Jeff Meacham, as well as Virtue, the self-proclaimed greatest columnist on NoDQ.com. Today's guest is our first female panelist on the NoDQ Panel series. We have Cindy G today. How's it going, Cindy?
I'm doing pretty well, guys, and I just say this. Well, thank you so much for having me here. Especially, I've been following NoDQ.com since late 2011, of course, starting with the NoDQ and A video.
Awesome.
As well, I did, yes, and of course, Talk Wrestling, Jeff, as well.
Got a few
Thank you.
And Virtue, yep, and I did read one of your articles, Virtue, as well. So,
which is funny to watch since 2011 because that's when I was gone.
Oh yeah, well, when you had that interview with RVD, you know,
that 2014, awesome. The return of Talk Wrestling. That was a good show. That was a good 4-week run we had there.
Oh yeah.
So if any of you missed it, go on the NoDQ channel and check it out. We have actually several interviews with RVD, but we're not here to talk about RVD as great as he is. We're here to talk about the best heel turns in wrestling history. And I have a list here of various heel turns over the years, and I'll get your guys' feedback and your thoughts. I want to start off with perhaps the biggest heel turn in wrestling history. Virtue, what am I talking about?
Well, you could be talking about a couple of them, but I think you're going to go with Hogan joining the NWO.
Absolutely. That was a defining moment in WCW. That was a game changer. That really set the course for what would eventually become the Attitude Era in WWE. WCW got the ball rolling, and right after the NWO started, WCW began to dominate on Monday nights for almost 2 years. 84 weeks, right, Jeff?
84, 83, something like that.
So yeah, Hogan turning heel was a huge shocker. Nobody ever thought Hogan would turn heel, but the timing was right. The fans were booing Hogan out of the building. Kind of sounds like somebody we know. A couple people we know, actually. But WCW decided to go with it. They turned Hogan heel. Jeff, I believe Hogan was not sure if he really wanted to do it. What do you remember about that heel turn?
Right up to the very night. As a matter of fact, they talked about this on the NWO Roundtable on Legends of Wrestling. They talk about, you know, there were several plans in place. Like if Hogan wouldn't do it, there was going to be Sting. If it wasn't going to be this, it was going. But Nash said it himself. You know, Hogan didn't want to do it, but he was smart enough to see that money train pulling off and going, I can still catch it. So the bottom line is Hulk Hogan, whether I like him or not, whether I love his character or not, he is a money person. He is about the money. He's about the almighty buck. And he saw the money in the outsiders. He saw the money in the two guys invading from the WWF and taking over wrestling. And he knew that if anything were to reinvigorate the character of Hulk Hogan, it would be becoming Hollywood Hogan. What do you think, Virtue?
For so many years, I always rooted for the heels when I was growing up watching wrestling. Everybody against Hulk Hogan. You know, even Ultimate Warrior, who was a face when he fought Hogan. Anybody against Hogan, I rooted for. And then the NWO formed. And guess what I did? It was cool. He turned heel, right? Everything that I wanted, something different. I started rooting in WCW for the baby faces. DDP, and we talked about my thoughts on Sting, but I actually did enjoy the Crow gimmick, so I rooted for the baby faces when the NWO formed. That's crazy because that was the first time I ever did that. So that's my take on it. In a whole different way. I know it was supposed to be cool to root for the heel, but I had already done that. So to me, when Hogan turned heel, for the first time in my wrestling fan life, I started liking the baby faces. So I'm curious, Cindy, what's your thoughts on Hollywood Hulk Hogan?
Well, let's just say this, is that with Hulk Hogan, like, it was a very unexpected moment, like, ever in entire history of wrestling, because with Hogan, he's like a very well-known star, like, in the 80s and 90s, he's like, the ultimate baby face towards everybody. Loved Hogan. Like, Hogan just show his, like, that say your prayer, take your vitamins, like, mantra, as being as like a real American hero. And so that's kind of like, for me, it's that when he joined NWO, like, let alone like him attacking Randy Savage, my mouth was complete, drop, and then ever since then, it's that, him joining NWO was like kind of like the best pivotal point in WCW history, and that's the only thing that kind of like, sticking through for it. But with Hogan being a heel, that's kind of like a complete 180 change.
Yeah, and remember all the garbage being thrown in the ring when Gene Okerlund came out for the interview. I mean, It was insane how the fans reacted to that. And yeah, Hogan reinvented himself. That kept his career going because he had gone very stale as a babyface. Even though he had been doing it for so long, he needed a change, and the change really kept his career going strong for several years, and it changed wrestling around. It really ushered in the new era where things were edgier, and what eventually led to the Attitude Era, like I said earlier. So, Cindy, I want to ask you, in your opinion, your favorite heel turn in wrestling history?
Well, actually, so I'm going to be going back to the 80s so far, wow. And this is going to be a pivotal like innovation of how tag teams are breaking up, which is my favorite heel turn of all time would have to be Shawn Michaels turning on Marty Jannetty, of Absolutely. Course. And like the reason why is that for that, I know that Shawn and Marty started up in the indie scenes like long ago before joining WWE, known as the Rockers, and they have like a really solid chemistry. However, little does everybody know that there is some backstage heat going on before every media outlets or even technology back in the day, so it's pretty cool for the fact that they kind of like turned that into like kind of like somewhat of a storyline of having, Marty and Shawn breaking off together, and especially like the perfect timing, like Bruce the Beefcake on Barbershop segment, and then whether like Marty told Shawn, like, it's up to you if you want to join him, still be a tag team or not. And then, of course, they hug it out until Shawn super kick him and then throw him off the window. So
you got it wrong. You got it wrong. Oh. Marty tried to escape from Shawn Michaels.
Escape. Okay.
Bobby Heenan.
Yes.
It's been like a while so far. So it's like
the brain, gotta love it.
Yep.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan's commentary for that was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the most memorable heel turns of all time, and with Jannetty going through the barbershop window. Mm-hmm. I mean, we still remember that. It's still that visual, and we saw it recreated several times over the years, with Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels with the Jeritron. I mean, it was just one of those moments that everyone remembers, and that's the moment that really got Shawn Michaels' career kicked into high gear as a singles competitor. I mean, Jeff, what were your memories of that turn by Shawn Michaels?
Well, I think Richie wanted to say it before I say anything. Richie had his hand up.
It's very brief. What I remember about that is Shawn kind of was subtly changing ahead of that, where you thought something could happen. And then they played it perfectly on that barbershop. He came out and he made the men. So literally the fans at that time were tricked because you didn't see somebody coming out and making a statement and then going back on it that quickly, because it would take months and months for something to happen. So the slow build up to Shawn's character, and then it happened so quick on that barbershop. I will never forget that. I remember watching that as it aired, and I know they taped it ahead of time because there wasn't an internet, so nothing leaked back then. Mm-hmm. But whenever it aired on Sunday Superstars or Saturday, whatever show that was, I remember watching it as it happened, and I was like, OMG. I mean, Jeff.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I cheered boisterously when Hogan joined the NWO, joined the Outsiders. I was all about that. But I was a Rockers fan. I enjoyed the Rockers thoroughly. And even as at the time, would have been 8-year-old, almost 9-year-old kid, watching the Rockers break up was heartbreaking. It was one of those things where I enjoyed the Rockers. They should have been tag team champions. I found out later they were for a brief period before they retconned the title change. But to see Shawn just completely take his partner out, throw him through a window, all that thing, everything that happened on that bar. But then at the very end, when he tore the magazine and looked in the camera, I saw the intensity in Shawn Michaels' eyes, and I even said to my dad, sitting on the couch next to me, I said, he's going places.
Yeah. Who thought Marty? Who actually thought Marty Jannetty was going to be better out of that? Did anybody back then?
I figured.
Were we naive?
No.
Well, no. I figured that Marty would have a decent run as a babyface, and once Shawn Michaels won the Intercontinental Championship, I immediately thought he would be challenged by Marty. It happened. It just didn't go the way we all thought it would.
You know what was great on all of that? Sensational Sherry. That,
God,
and I know it was brief, kind of, but that I loved that. I mean, I really was a big fan of hers.
Sherry, even going back to the AWA when she was still wrestling, she was a star maker. Anybody that they put with Sherry, whether it's AWA, WWF, or WCW, they were made a star or they enhanced their stardom. We talk about, Buddy Rose and Doug Summers. You talk about, all those guys that were with Sherry. Sherry made everybody a star, but her and Shawn Michaels really got Shawn over that initial hurdle of the heel turn. It was so well done.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think it was very memorable. Very memorable. Go ahead, Virtue.
It was. Now, on that, I want to segue over, since we're talking about Sherry, I want to go back into the 80s and the Mega Powers collide. So the whole Savage turn, to me, it's hard for me to say any heel turn was better than that one. I think Savage's run during when he was a babyface with Hogan and the Mega Powers to when they collided and then he went on with Sherry to become Macho King, I think that was the greatest character development in the history of wrestling, and why I think Savage is, boom, right up there. So I want everyone to talk about that. I mean, I could just sit there and go on and on. I absolutely loved it. That Savage is one of the reasons that pulled me in as a kid to watch wrestling. I absolutely, and when he turned heel, and again, remember I said I loved everybody against Hogan. I popped huge for that. So I will go, Cindy, do you remember back to that Savage turning on Hogan?
Oh, well, I kind of don't quite remember exactly, but I did watch a couple clips of Randy Savage heel turn against Hogan while they were tag teaming as the Mega Powers. It's all because of the one factor, Miss Elizabeth. Randy thought that Hogan's trying to steal Miss Elizabeth away from him, but then let her know, and it's just hey, a friendly gesture and all that, and plus she's managing both Hogan and Savage, so it's based on jealousy storyline that's leading to going out of control, and that's when Savage needs to turn heel right away as instance.
Yeah, and it came so full circle because if you remember, that really went all the way to WrestleMania 7 to the retirement match with Hogan and Warrior, and then how Sherry got ousted and then Elizabeth came back to celebrate with him at the end. To me, that was a tale of all time in wrestling. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, you mentioned that Savage's development from babyface to heel was the greatest. I think his entire WWF run from 85 all the way until the retirement, and even in the 92 when he feuded with Ric Flair, that character had such development over the years. He went from this cocky, arrogant, just abusive to his manager heel, all the way to arguably more popular than Hogan for a brief period of time, then right back to the domineering, obsessive, crazy heel, became a completely maniacal king. And then, even though he turned babyface in 91, he still was the crazy Macho Man going to 92. Yep. So I think that character, I think you hit it right on the money, Virtue. His character development over the course of his WWF career was the greatest character development of all time.
Did he not nail both babyface role and heel role?
Absolutely. I mean, he was able to go back and forth. He could do.
And you know what? He didn't need to do much to his character either way to do that, which was incredible. I mean, people talk about we did an underrated poll earlier in our series here. I think Randy's character tweaks were underrated leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I agree on that. And the thing about that storyline is that it was a slow build. They began building up Savage and Hogan back in 87 when you had the Honky Tonk Man taking out Savage with the guitar and Hogan coming to his aid. That was the birth of the Mega Powers. But back then they had already decided that Hogan and Savage were eventually going to fight for the world title. So they had this very slow build. WrestleMania 4, Hogan helped Savage win. SummerSlam, just the little things, the little details, Hogan picking up Elizabeth and Randy Savage, just a very slight glance that Savage gave him, just a little tease. Yeah. And then Survivor Series, they escalated it a little bit more. Royal Rumble, it got more intense. And then finally at the Saturday night's main event, that's when, the poop hit the fan, so to speak, and when all hell broke loose backstage. That was just such a great segment when Hogan and Savage were arguing, and then Savage just hits Hogan in the head with the belt, and Elizabeth is crying.
Blindsided him.
Yeah, Hogan's acting was a bit over the top, but it was entertaining. I mean, that was the point. It was supposed to be entertaining, and Hogan was betrayed, and it was such a fun storyline and very entertaining, and the payoff was great.
Well, what's so funny is Hogan talked about this. I think it was an interview he did on a recent thing, or even in his book. He talked about that Randy was so intense. He was arguing during the commercial break, and they didn't know when they came back from the cue to come back. Hogan couldn't hear the cue to come back, so they just went with it, and they taped the whole thing, and Hogan got up. Did we get it? Did we got it? Are we good?
Yeah, just passion.
Passion from Randy Savage. I agree with Virtue hit that one right on the money, I tell you what.
Yeah. Now, going back a little bit, the next one I have on the list here, we're actually going in order so far, so maybe you guys have my notes. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys are just mind readers. I don't know. But the next one is Andre turning on Hogan to set up WrestleMania 3. I mean, for that match, I mean, that was one of the biggest heel turns ever when you consider that it led to arguably the biggest WrestleMania match of all time, 93,000 people, Pontiac Silverdome. Andre, I just remember Hogan's disappointment in Andre, and then Andre ripping the shirt and ripping off the crucifix. I mean, that was really powerful stuff.
Making him bleed. Didn't he bleed?
Yes.
He bled from the cross.
Yeah.
When he raked his chest.
I mean, that was just so heartbreaking. Virtue, your thoughts on that?
That was about the time I started watching wrestling, right around WrestleMania 3, but leading into it. I always felt Andre, he was the gentle giant, so they said. I always felt, because of the way he looked and that the eyes and the forehead and his mask, that he was a heel. So, to me, I was scared to death of him as a kid, just looking at him. So it was weird because I always, that's probably when I started realizing, do I really like this Hulk Hogan guy? I mean, I don't like Andre. I'm scared of him. But I have to give it to Andre because he was that larger than life, and it just sucked me in. And I legitimately, 7-year-old me was afraid of him. So what do you think? We'll go to Russian Roulette. Cindy.
Well, honestly, WrestleMania 3, I was even born yet, but let alone, yes, I did watch on the WWE Network, and that match, especially with Andre's heel turn on Hogan, that is what is best for business so far, because with Andre, he's known for as the giant so far, and everybody undefeated as well. Yeah. And so, having him turning on Hogan, it definitely would be, the best choice for it, let alone pretty much gruesome so far.
Being a Hogan fan started in 1990 and going back and watching that, people made fun of, the whole Enzo and Cass turn where you can see Enzo's, the whole Simpsons parody. You can see the moment that Enzo's heart breaks. Mm-hmm. You can see on that Piper's Pit when Andre walks out with Bobby Heenan, yes. Hogan is just dejected. You're with him?
Yeah, and let's give a lot of credit to Heenan. I mean, Heenan really helped pull that. Dude,
Bobby... You know what? I go back and forth between Bobby Heenan and Paul Heyman, but everything before the Dangerous Alliance was formed in 1992, Bobby Heenan's ability to get heat for anybody he was walking with is second to none. Mm-hmm. You've got Rick Rude, you've got the Brainbusters, but Andre the Giant, the consummate baby face, the gentle giant as you put it, the fact that he was able to turn and Bobby was able to manipulate the Giant just enough to get a title shot was unbelievable. And Andre's heel turn, looking back, like you said, Aaron, led to, I still consider the greatest WrestleMania build of all time, the greatest WrestleMania sellout of all time, because this thing happened a couple years ago with 101,000, complete fabrication. Andre and Hulk Hogan put 93,000 people into that Pontiac Silverdome, period.
Yeah, that was a massive, massive draw. And I think because Andre was such a strong heel, you had a strong good guy versus a strong bad guy, and that's what really drew in people for that event. Now, Jeff, I want to ask you, Name something that we haven't talked about yet, which is at the top of your list for best
Oh
heel turn.
goodness. It's one of those things where it's not a grand heel turn at the end of the day. It's not something that people are going to talk about in 25, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it's going to be. Trish Stratus.
Oh.
In 2004.
That's a good one.
When she slapped Chris Jericho across the face and gave that little evil head cock, so to speak, and then made out with Christian. That was just like, no, Trish, you're our girl. You can't do this to us. It was horrible. That one for sure. And then another one just popped in my mind when I thought about Trish. How about Stephanie McMahon?
Oh, turning on Vince
in 1999. That was like, what? You're with Hunter? Like, but he did this horrible. It was all a big plan. I couldn't believe it. Those two stick out as a women's wrestler person. Those two stick out in my mind for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. That one, even though I think that the effect of it dwindled a little bit when Vince came back with Stephanie a couple months later and reunited again. I wasn't a fan of that, but we'll talk about that when we do worst heel turns. I think that's a good candidate for that one.
Okay.
All right, another one I wanted to bring up here, going a little bit into the 90s, is WrestleMania 13 when Bret Hart and Steve Austin had their double turn.
Oh, yeah.
I was waiting for that one.
In my opinion, that was like the best double heel turn in wrestling history. Bret Hart just masterfully did that with that heel turn, the execution of it and everything. I think he said that, he was able to just kick Steve Austin when he was down, and just in that instant, he went from being a good guy to a bad guy. I mean, Virtue, your thoughts on it, because you seem very happy about bringing this up.
So when that happened, obviously that was the sign that Austin was, now going to get pushed in a massive direction. But what I liked most about it, the Austin stuff happened a year later when he finally went over Shawn at WrestleMania 14. It created that, to me, an epic feud. We've already seen Bret versus Shawn, but the tail end of Bret versus Shawn after this happened was absolutely phenomenal. And it's weird because for the time being, Bret turned heel, anti-American, so to speak. Shawn was the babyface, and it led up to the wacky screw job, and then that ultimately led Shawn to be heel. So it was crazy. The Attitude Era was in full effect. That's why I loved it so much. It was insane. I liked Austin. He was cool. He was good. The attitude, the anti-boss. But I liked Bret's new direction because we really hadn't seen that before. Yeah. So that was the time where I kind of liked both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think,
Well,
Jeff?
I wanted to add real quick before Jeff gives his thoughts. The thing about Bret that I liked was how he just gradually got more and more frustrated, and you would start to see his attitude change. He became more of a crybaby. And then after WrestleMania, I got to mention when he came out and reunited Owen Hart and the British Bulldog. That is one of my all-time favorite Raw segments. Owen starts crying. Yes. I love that segment so much. So, Jeff, your thoughts?
I was just going to say, the entire build from his return at Survivor Series all the way until the heel turn, and the night, of course, the 2 nights after on Raw when they did the reunion of the Hart Foundation, that whole entire few month period was unbelievable for Bret. It really got a ball rolling for him, and my goodness, the crocodile tears from Owen Hart about reuniting with his brother. But when we mentioned Bret Hart, and Cindy, I'll ask you about Bret in a minute from WrestleMania 13, but I got to throw this in there too. What about the initial heel turn in the first place of Owen Hart?
Yes, definitely. Got to add that to the list.
One.
But Cindy, for first of all, your thoughts on Bret Hart's heel turn and Austin's face turn as a result in 1997, and then I'll touch on Owen after that.
Okay, so honestly, when that moment when Bret Hart did the sharpshooter on Steve Austin and how tight he's going through, I honestly feel really bad for Austin, knowing that why the hell is Bret doing so far? And then not only about this whole double turning, it got me to a point where I'm already hating Bret Hart, legitly, and it gives me more respect for Steve Austin. And that's what Virtue's saying, this is a full-fledged start of the Attitude Era.
Yeah, I mean, it made Austin a sympathetic character. You felt bad for him. He was there bleeding and not giving up, and after the match is over, Bret kicks him when he's down. Bret even said that in the documentary. That's what instantly made him a heel. That was the moment when the official turn took place. So, Jeff, what did you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to say, Owen Hart had a mildly successful career. He'd been kind of plodding around for the previous 5 years, kind of doing some things WCW and WWF as a Blue Blazer, of course. But the moment he yanked Bret off the ropes at the Survivor Series, all the way up until the Rumble of '94, and then that entire first year of him being a heel in 1994, I thought was so well done. Even the best part about that, I think, Owen's entire first year as a heel was the following Survivor Series, 94, when he totally reduced himself to tears, was legitimately concerned over his brother, and he convinced Helen to throw in the towel. That was just like, dude, give the man an Oscar or an Emmy or something. That was brilliant. Yeah. And I think Owen's heel run, whether it was the moment in 94 with Bret, whether it was the Slammy Award-winning Owen Hart, I think his entire run as a heel, even when he was still a bad guy in the Hart Foundation in 97 and people were cheering for him anyway, Owen Hart is a very underrated heel, I think.
Oh, I agree. And that Rumble turn was excellent, even though he botched his line, I kicked your leg out of your leg. But Owen
I was like, oh, geez.
I mean, jealousy. I mean, it's the perfect trait of a great villain. Somebody who's just so jealous, and that's how Owen Hart was. His character.
It's freaking biblical. It's Cain and Abel, man.
Yes.
It's legendary stuff.
Perfect. You nailed it, Jeff. Now, there's a couple of Shawn Michaels turns I would like to talk about since we're on the topic of Shawn Michaels. The first one is actually when Shawn was turned against by Triple H, 2002, to set up the SummerSlam match and Shawn Michaels' big comeback after being gone for 4 years. And we thought we were going to see this DX reunion, but then out of nowhere, Triple H hits the pedigree and turns heel. Cindy, your thoughts on that?
Well, honestly, it's like a very heartbreaking moment because, I'm a huge DX fan myself, and seeing him turning on Triple H, it's that pivotal point where it's like, is this the official end of DX? And then, let alone, it's leading on to him and Triple H feuding, and, but honestly, if it wasn't for the heel turn, Triple H would have done, even much successful, career in WWE so far.
That was just insane when that happened. I mean, I was just I was shocked because I thought they were going in a different direction. Jeff, your thoughts?
You can hear the air sucking out of that arena when he kicked Shawn in the gut after the DX promo. It was like
because I think
did we know at that point Shawn was coming back for an active career again?
That's the thing. The original plan, from what I understand, it was supposed to be Triple H versus Kevin Nash at SummerSlam, and then Nash tore his quad. So we were thinking, okay, so they're just going to have a DX reunion now, and that's going to be the new storyline. But then we get the big swerve with Triple H turning on him. That was what made it so shocking. And then Shawn was coming back for another match, and that's when we realized what direction they were going in, which led to one of the best SummerSlam matches of all time, in my opinion.
It really did. It really did.
Your thoughts, Virtue?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish there was never a DX reunion with Shawn and Triple H, because I think that watered it down a little bit, especially with Shawn's religious beliefs later on. But that turn created that SummerSlam feud. I was perfectly fine with that. I mean, it even pushed Shawn. I think he won the Elimination Chamber at that Survivor Series and had that brief title run. And he, again, feuded with Triple H all the way through the end of the year. So that was fantastic. I do want to give a shout-out to Michael's run. It was a great, he had been in and out of WWF for various, he got beat up, he lost his smile. But back in 97, when the screw job happened in Montreal and DX was forming, that was more of a gradual heel turn versus an abrupt one, kind of forced by Vince McMahon. But Shawn's work with that original run of DX, to me, I want to put that over. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Just Shawn Michaels everything. You notice how he's in this video the most?
Well, Shawn, speaking of Shawn, another heel turn from Shawn in 2005 when he turned on Hulk Hogan on that, I think it was 4th of July.
4th of July, brother. Yeah, that's it.
And I'll tell you, that 1 month that Shawn was a heel, some of the best heel work I've ever seen ever. That CNN skit where he made fun of Hogan, dressed up as Hogan. And then when he came out in Montreal and teased Bret Hart coming out, That was like the
That
greatest
was
troll job of
beautiful.
all time.
My goodness.
I loved it. I wish Shawn was a heel for longer. I was so disappointed that only lasted a month.
And I think it's safe to say all of us here will put Shawn Michaels in the top 30 American. Let's say the top 5.
Here we go.
No. I'm going to keep this short and sweet.
Oh,
we'll say the top 5 American wrestlers in terms of in-ring entertainment. And yes, Shawn was a draw. He wasn't a Rock draw or the Hogan draw. Shawn Michaels was a draw. First of all, the Suck It shirts, the first run of DX, sold a ton, okay? The Undertaker, back-to-back matches, they did that with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. That made the streak more significant than ever. Shawn Michaels was a draw. Top 5, I would say, number 1. But anyway, I had to rage. Sorry.
That is.
How you doing,
virtue
Dave?
true.
Good to see you, Dave. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Shawn's turns from babyface to heel and vice versa are definitely some of the best ever, and they made serious money. Whether it was Hogan, whether it was Jannetty, didn't make a whole lot of money, but it made Shawn Michaels' career. Just different things that Shawn Michaels has done over the last 30 years has just been nothing short of legendary, iconic, and definitely worthy of a Hall of Fame, which he's inducted to. Somebody I want to bring up that nobody's mentioned yet because it did not happen in WWE. It happened in the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions. And I'm talking about a tag team match between Barry Windham and Lex Luger and the Four Horsemen. When Barry turned on Lex and took the offer from J.J. Dillon to join the Horsemen. Now, people don't talk about that because, it really didn't impact WWE's, impact Jim Crockett business, but it led to the greatest Horseman faction ever. BW, Tully, Double A, and Nate.
I totally agree on that, Jeff. That was another great turn as well.
Look at you getting a Horseman plug in there.
Gotta do it, brother. You know what? Those guys are the reason there was an NWO, reason there was a DX, reason there were factions that were gang related in WWE later on, because the Horsemen made quote unquote gang warfare and quote unquote, being cocky bad guy groups cool.
Now, I have one I want to see what Cindy's thoughts are. Can I do that, Aaron?
Sure.
You briefly mentioned it earlier in the video. You should remember this. This happened in 2008. Chris Jericho turned heel on Shawn Michaels. And that the whole suit, the monotone voice.
Yes.
Tell me your thoughts on that Jericho run, please. Cindy.
Well, honestly, and he did have a pretty decent run in 2008, but with that heel turn for Shawn Michaels, it says it all, one thing led to another is that Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels feud, it's going to be one of the best feud of all in 2018, if you guys agree, Yeah.
And now, let me ask you this. Were you a bigger Shawn Michaels fan or a Chris Jericho fan?
Honestly, I'm more into a Chris Jericho fan.
Okay, I like that answer.
Yes.
But here's the thing. I saw this probably was the best modern day, this millennium or this century heel turn ever. Did you ever see Chris Jericho acting like that with the slow talking? He had always been charismatic. He would make fun of Stephanie. Even his heel run as undisputed champion, he had the longer hair, the shinier rock star clothes. Did anybody ever see that in Chris Jericho? To me, that was character development 101.
He reinvented himself completely.
Jeff, what do you think on that run?
Yeah. I mentioned Macho Man's character development over the course of whatever it was, 7 or 8 years, but Chris Jericho completely 180 on everything that Y2J, that the Ayatollah of Rock and Roll had been, where he would just deliver the Nick Bockwinkel style promo. Was something to behold. Chris Jericho took everything that Nick Bockwinkel was in the AWA and everything that, a bad guy should be, and just created this character. And they've called him the Madonna of WWE. He very much is. He can always reinvent himself and do something different, just a little bit even. Chris Jericho is, we mentioned Shawn Michaels, the quotes from a certain other podcaster earlier. Chris Jericho is definitely in the top 5 all time, period. Whether it's, and he didn't make a whole lot of money, but he actually, he's one of the top 5 characters ever.
Yeah, I mean, Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho have the longevity. You can definitely say that about
They definitely
them.
do.
They might not have been the biggest draw for any one period of time, but overall, their entire career, they made a huge impact in wrestling. And I know a lot of people that have told me they started watching wrestling because of Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. They actually became fans because of those guys. So I know they have definitely been big draws. Now, that's a whole other argument.
And I guess some of those 2008 to 2009 house shows, people said were very entertaining. The way Chris Jericho would pander or play to the crowd. Yeah. He would go out there and troll them for like 10, 15 minutes to end the show.
Well, what did he do with the Brazilian flag? I think
he kicked that one. That was, I think, a legitimate incident. And then there was an old guy in the front row he taunted. I don't know if that was staged or not, but there was some very interesting.
Oh no, that was on SmackDown. When SmackDown was going off the air, he got in an argument with the old man. That was legit.
Yeah, it was good times, man. He really. Kevin Owens is trying to do that today with the house show. Yeah.
Kevin Owens. You know what? I'm not a fan of Kevin. We all know that. We all know that story. But Kevin's initial turn on Sami Zayn after one night of being in NXT will be talked about because Kevin Owens just took off after that.
Yeah, when I was at the NXT house show in Portland, they showed the footage of that, and like everybody was still oohing and awing over that. So after 3 or 4 years now, people are still reacting to that. That was a very memorable turn there when he did that. A couple more real quick before we wrap this up. A few recent ones. Actually, I want to go back because there's one critical one that I forgot to mention, and that's when The Rock turned heel at Survivor Series 98 and became the corporate champion, and that set up WrestleMania. That was a great heel turn. Go ahead, Virtue.
All I'm going to say on that is thank you for the great entertainment, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara. I appreciate it. That was awesome. Next.
Well, that because it had not been done so many times, that was a great swerve. I mean, the problem was years later they would keep doing the same swerve over and over again, and after a while it got old. But then that was fresh. I mean, that was definitely something at the time I did not see coming. I did not expect The Rock to end the show as the heel corporate champion and Shane McMahon to double-cross Austin. I was not expecting those things going in when I was watching that. So I was definitely surprised.
Was that the Survivor Series where it's a deadly game?
Yes.
Yep, the tournament.
Can't forget it.
Yeah, absolutely a great heel turn. Now, a couple more I'll bring up and get your guys' thoughts on. A few recent ones. We've actually had a few good recent heel turns. The first one I want to talk about is Seth Rollins turning on his brothers, Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns. With the steel chair. Just to hear that fan scream out "No!" right when Rollins is swinging the chair, that made it perfect. Cindy, your thoughts on that?
Okay, so honestly, that was like the very unexpected moment that honestly I thought Dean is going to be the one that's going to turn heel out of Roman and Seth, because we all did. Yeah, like let alone Dean had a good run as a U.S. champ while he was being part of the Shield, especially with his attitude. Like I don't know what it is, but it definitely screams heel to me.
Yes.
But then like when Seth turned on Roman and Dean, my mind was blown away. It's like, how can you make Seth heel, let alone how it's going to affect it in the long run? But at the end, of course, he did join Dear Authority, which is like the last of my favorite storyline of all, and, it gave him like, a higher push. He got the title, unfortunately with the injuries, and all of that's going on, but yeah.
So was Dean Ambrose your favorite member of the Shield when they were together?
Yes.
Mine too, when they were together.
Yeah.
Yep.
For the record.
The thing is, people thought Rollins was going to be like the weakest link of the three. People thought Ambrose would be one of the top stars because of his promos. Jeff, what do you think?
I never thought that. See, people forget that Seth Rollins was Tyler Black before he was Seth Rollins, and I saw him at PWG, at WSX, and at Ring of Honor. I saw him as the guy that was going to break out of the Shield. I always saw that. So
because the thing is, WWE is more about promos and character than wrestling. I mean, let's face it.
Very true. Very true.
When you look at the Vince McMahon criteria, that's last place. First place is the look, which Roman Reigns has, and second is the talking ability, which Ambrose
is what Dean has, right?
But Rollins was obviously the best wrestler of the three, in my opinion. I still think that. And he managed to take that heel turn and make it work for him and became a major star. So he really was able to succeed in that role, being like the new version of Triple H. But anyways, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, with Seth Rollins, people never expected him to be the best talker of the group, the best wrestler, the best heel of the group.
Mm-hmm.
But he proved everybody wrong, and I commend Seth for that.
Oh,
he did very well.
Talker. He turned into
he really did. He really has. People talk about The Rock becoming a great talker when he turned heel and was able to do that. But Seth Rollins really broke out of his shell.
Let's go back to that DX fake turn or fake, when Triple H turned on Michaels. What if they tried to put the Shield back together and then they had the guts to make Roman instantly, as we all thought they were forming again, Roman turns heel? Wouldn't that be great?
That would be fantastic.
That would be the greatest thing in the last 10 years. It really would.
I had to. I'm sorry.
All right.
Good.
The last two.
It's all good.
Yeah, we got to move forward here. The last two I wanted to address are from this year. The first one was from February, the Festival of Friendship with Kevin Owens.
Oh man,
that was such a great turn. I love it. That was awesome. And then
it's weird though, Aaron, because they were both technically already heels. So how would you classify that? That was a weird situation.
Uber heel turn for Kevin.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But that was like just a very. The thing about it was that Kevin Owens has been getting cheers and was getting all these cheers from the fans. Mm-hmm. And when he turned on Jericho, the fans were so upset about that. They actually were just chanting a-hole at him and really
there were
booing
people
him.
crying at a 2017 WWE show. Like, what the hell?
Yeah,
let's be honest, really though. Chris Jericho sold that to make that super memorable.
Did.
I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah, and then we mentioned it a few minutes ago, Enzo and Cass from just recently.
Yeah.
I thought that was extremely well done. Enzo did a great job, and Cass did the promo of his career, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think the actual execution of the turn was good, but the slow build was like, okay, it's Cass. Can we just really? Come on.
Yeah.
But I thought the actual turn was very well done.
The actual in-ring promo when he cut the promo and then booted Cass in the Enzo in the face, that was good. But the 4 weeks, whatever, it was like we all knew it was going to be Cass. It's like, come on, guys, let's just.
Naive me thought it could have been Enzo hiring a new young gun, and Enzo turning it. I mean,
no.
Well, no, but I mean because to me it was so obvious that Cass was. I was trying to look at it like, could it be something else? It was so obvious about Cass,
I think I mentioned this on Talk Wrestling after that happened. Like, why does Corey Graves know about that and not Kurt Angle?
I know.
Something to think about.
All right, before we wrap this up, is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? Go ahead.
Stone Cold 2001.
Okay.
Shut up.
Okay, so honestly, this is going to be going for this year, and unfortunately, this particular wrestler is currently injured. I would say it's going to be back to NXT TakeOver Chicago. Tommaso Ciampa turning on Johnny Gargano.
Oh, God,
the ending of DIY. Like, for me, that was complete unexpected so far for the fact that, like, I thought Gargano and Ciampa are going to go to the main roster together, possibly, like, on SummerSlam. I know it didn't happen on WrestleMania like I was hoping for, of course, the revival, whatever, but I thought they would go together. But then let alone that, when Ciampa and Gargano were right by the Titantron, doing their thing and all that, and then when Ciampa mouthed off to him, like, this is our moment, this is my moment, and there you have it. That is the start of, like, the biggest heel turn that everybody was so drawn. Like, you could hear the whole a-hole chant, the WTF, hell, even his gimmick that he's going to be using, like in the indies, the Psycho Killer gimmick.
There were rituals in the parking lot after the event.
And you know what else was great about that? Because they showed the credits graphic, and then they did the turn right after that, so you thought the show was going off the air. So it's like they pulled a swerve on everybody. That was
really did.
Well,
that was really well done.
Production.
Is Kevin Dunn still doing that stuff?
Well, whoever was responsible for that, I mean, that was really brilliant because that threw off people even more. We thought, okay, the show's going off the air, and then bam, the turn happens.
You have to remember, Virtue, Vince is still in charge of the production values of WWE on Raw, SmackDown pay-per-views, but Hunter's still the guy that makes the final call in NXT, so that was totally Hunter doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got one more. Let's not talk about it here. Let this be something in the comments. The gradual, ever so gradual, back to heel turn from CM Punk against Jeff Hardy, and then he eventually created the Straight Edge Society. I actually enjoyed that run of CM Punk.
I enjoyed Punk's turn on The Rock, actually, on the Raw 1000.
Yes.
That was another good one.
That was the good one.
But you guys can leave your comments.
I was going to say, what do you guys out there think that we didn't mention? Because there's so many heel turns over the last 100 million years, whatever it's been, in wrestling. What do you guys think?
Yeah, leave us a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, thank you so much for being on today. It was a pleasure
you, Cindy.
to have
Yes,
you on.
Bravo.
You got any plugs you would like to give out to the people?
No problem, but I want to say thank you so much. You guys been an honor again to be part of this panel and all that. And, I've been an avid watcher, and I did try to read the columns here and there, depends on the timing. But yeah, so you guys more than welcome to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel as well, at simply_C_OK, where, yes, I did mainly talk more about wrestling, whether it's WWE, but also indie wrestling scenes as well in Southern Ontario area. So, and if you guys are in Southern Ontario area, make sure to check out Alpha One Wrestling. We're coming to Oshawa August 13th, as well as in St. Catharines on September 10th. And also, I'll be doing live tweets sometime for the WWE pay-per-views as well, and sometime Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. Depends on the timing convenience as well.
Awesome.
Right. Cool. Sounds good. I'll make sure to include some links in the description box, too, so people can check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching the video today. Leave a comment, like I said earlier. Follow Jeff at _Jeff Meacham. Follow Virtue at NoDQ_Virtue, and you know where to find me. We will see you guys next time for another edition of the No DQ panel. See you next time.